So just a little overview of our methodology here. We want to end up with a varied, interesting architectural modular curtain wall system. We have all the same units in here right now. Obviously, there'd be no problem with that being a facade, but we're going to experiment around with some other elements that we can put in. And typically, one of the ways you might think about doing that, if I tab in here, I'll select the wall, and then if I tab by hitting the tab key, just like with other curtain walls where you might want to place a door in there, you can go in and select that item, and you could unpin it if you want to change it. But that actually can be quite tedious because you know, when you're going through a lot of variations, just grabbing them. So we're going to look at putting all of the features we want into a single custom panel and then change the visibility in order to change the way they look. That way we won't have to worry about unpinning them, and we'll have a super BIM component that will be all of the curtain wall elements within one module. So any changes we make to, let's say, the extrusion of the profile, that'll populate all of them. So it's a much more efficient way to possibly think about approaching this. So we're going to grab this and we're going to add some elements to it. So I've selected one, and we can always do Edit Family to take us out to our unit. And the first thing we want to do is maybe just create the idea of a solid panel in front of it, just something to give a column to it. And hopefully if this is coordinated, the lab that you're going through now is coordinated with the lecture part. You'll see that there are many ways to articulate facades to create a hierarchy, and this would be like a column or pilaster area. So let's take a look at making an extrusion. We'll go to the exterior side of the wall, and we're going to add a solid panel over the whole face of this. So I'm going to create an extrusion. I'm going to go ahead and grab the rectangle tool, and we'll pull a rectangle out, and we're going to lock it off. And we might want to set this distance. Let's say we'll set this distance to be quite generous. We'll say 24 inches. Well, maybe that's too generous. Let's say 18 inches, not 18 feet. And we'll complete that off. And now we need to make sure that it's going to behave parametrically. So let's look at this from the exterior side. And we want to tie this off to the top of the panel. And we want to tie it off to the side. And we want to tie it off to the side. And I don't believe we need to lock this one down, but we're going to do that anyway. So now we have it behaving hopefully parametrically. If we scooch this down, that panel will stay with it. We'll look at that in a 3D view. So now we have that panel behaving, the solid panel behaving parametrically. So let's do a couple of things right away that affect how we see this in the curtain wall system that we put it in. We're going to want to give this a material, but I want to adjust that material not inside of the family element, but inside of the project. So I'm going to create a parameter right away. I'm going to go ahead and create a material parameter, and it already labels it a material under Material and Finishes, and we're just going to call this color 1, and we're going to make that a type parameter so that it affects the whole global change of color, not an individual element. An instant parameter, I could change any individual color, and that might be useful in other applications. So I'm going to select that, and that's okay. So now that has a color assigned to it, and now we don't always want it showing, so we're going to actually create a visibility parameter. So I'll click in front of that button again, in front of the visible, and I'll make that parameter right from there. And I'm going to call this show solid. And we're going to make that an instance parameter so that we can adjust that on individual elements. And we'll click OK. And actually, if we review the parameters in the open up the palette, You'll notice now we have category or color and finish by category, which we can adjust in the other one. But we also have show solid, and I'm going to unclick that so it's not the default to show up. So I'll click OK. We'll save that. We're going to load that into the project now. It's going to ask about overwriting. And now we're going to go ahead and try to see how that would function. So I'm going to grab one panel, and you notice it says show solid. So I'm going to click solid on. And if that works right and I hit apply, we get now a solid panel over that. So now we can adjust. It's still the same family element, but now we can adjust the characteristics of what's showing in it. And I'm going to just undo that for a minute. And I'm going to use another technique to select those. I'm going to go ahead and grab the first one again by tabbing. And then I'm going to right click and I'm going to select all of them in the vertical grid. And I can give them all that. I can turn that parameter on for all of those. So now we could go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. Oops. And select them. Okay, and then we'll just back off here and we'll start to articulate a little bit of a hierarchy here. And we'll do the same thing over here. Okay, so now we need to add, we're going to continue to add elements like that and then be able to adjust whether they're visible or not visible accordingly. So let's go ahead now and create a solid spandrel element or a baguette element. Let's so all we have to do now is just click back into this again, edit the family. Like I said, a baguette, usually a rectangular piece of tubing that extends across the face. Baguette kind of referring to, I believe, like a French loaf of bread, long and thin, slender element. We'll take a look at this from the left-hand side view. So we've got that solid panel, and let's say we want to put a series of baguettes across our spandrel element. And this is not going to behave exactly adaptively, so I tried to create a way to do this, but it really wasn't performing nice enough that I really wanted to kind of pursue making this an instructional element. So we're going to make a 2x2 baguette. And we're going to look at this now from the front view and just make sure we can get some parametric adaptive behavior out of this so that it conforms to the I just dragged that over and I lost it. Let me undo that a minute. Lock that off to that side. That's funny, there's another lock right on top of the other one. I don't know how to get around that. That's really strange. Let's see what happens with it. It looks like it's behaving okay. Let me go to the, let me flip it around here so I can see what's going on the other side. Let's go to wireframe. All right, so it appears to be behaving properly. I'm going to just make a few copies going up. And we're just going to go back and experiment with this a little bit. So I'm going to make a a series of copies. We'll space them at, let's say 6 inches, and we probably need 5 of them. Nope, we need more than that. And we don't need 8, so we need 7. And that's an array group, so if we give that a property of being visible or not, it'll make all the ones behave similarly. So let's go to a parameter. Let's create a new parameter called show baguettes. And it's not a dimension, it's a visibility parameter. And we want it to be an instant parameter. It's under visibility, show solid by default. That actually indicates that that might be incorrect. Let's see if what kind of parameter that is. Show solid should be a visibility parameter. That was a mistake. I'm surprised that worked. And show baguettes is screwed up because it thinks it's a dimension. So let's go ahead and edit that again. It's a visibility, but it thinks it's a parameter as a length. So I'm going to cancel out of that. I'm going to actually delete that one. It's incorrectly created. We'll try and recreate it again. We don't want this to be I'm going to go actually, it's not allowing me to understand how to select that properly. So there's another approach to it that'll be a little more useful to us. If we go to, if we click into the model array and we go to visibility, we can now create a new visibility. And let's see how that works. All right, let's go ahead and load that in the project and see how that'll work. Okay, so we have two errors. One is the baguettes are not behaving adaptively in the way they're duplicated. And that has to do something with the array. I find that to be a little bit troublesome. So we're going to do a little patch for that. And it's automatically appearing. So let's go ahead and edit those two conditions. And instead of doing that as an array, I'm just going to make copies of it. So let's go to the left-hand side view again. And I'm going to just X that out. Finish that off. Now there are no more. So they're all gone. Now I'm going to just paste that baguette back in again. Let's move it. It's still calling it a model group. Nope, it's not now. Okay, so let's go ahead now and look at that from the exterior. And lock that off. And that's not behaving. We're having a for the life of me, I can't figure out how to get that lock out of the way of the other one. If I zoom in close enough, I guess I can lock it off there. And now hopefully that'll behave parametrically. And it appears to be. So let's go back to the left-hand side now. And all we're going to do is just make copies of this. So we're going to use the copy command. And we're going to make multiples. And we're just going to go up 6 inches at a pop. And we're going to give it all the same show baguettes parameter. And let's see how that does now. Oops. And the other thing is we want to make sure that, I'm going to cancel that out a minute. And we want to make sure that that show baguettes parameter, you see it's clicked visible. So let's go to the show baguettes and unclick it so it's not visible. And then go ahead and load that into the project. And overwrite the existing version. And there our baguettes are appearing in the proper location. And we still have non-adaptive behavior. So I'm going to go ahead and troubleshoot that. And then on the next clip, I'm going to correct that and we'll start adding some other features.